Emma adjusted the strap of the worn diaper bag cutting into her shoulder as she stepped into the airplane. The terminal had been loud, crowded, and overwhelming, and now the aisle seemed impossibly narrow as she maneuvered with one hand while holding her 6-month-old daughter, Lily, in the other. Her chest tightened with nerves. Flying wasn't something Emma did often. In fact, she hadn't been on a plane in nearly 8 years, not since a long-ago trip with her parents before life had turned complicated. But now she was here, clutching a discounted ticket she had bought at the last minute with almost every dollar she had left. She was headed to Chicago for a job interview that could make or break the fragile future she was trying to build for her daughter. She glanced at her crumpled boarding pass. Seat 2A. That couldn't be right. Her brow furrowed as she studied the numbers along the rows. She had only ever known economy. Rows in the 20s, 30s, the cramped seats in the back where children fussed and people shifted uncomfortably for hours. But here she was, standing in front of row 2, staring at wide leather seats with armrests that gleamed in more legroom than she thought possible on an airplane. This must be a mistake, she murmured under her breath. But Lily let out a soft cry, tiny fists waving, and Emma felt the eyes of other passengers on her. Flustered, she slid into the seat anyway, praying no one would notice before she had a chance to figure things out. She sank into the cushion. It was so comfortable it almost felt wrong. She pulled Lily close and rocked her, whispering the lullaby she always hummed at bedtime. For the first time in days, the baby settled quickly, her thumb finding its way to her mouth. Emma exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. But her relief didn't last. A shadow fell across her. Emma looked up into the sharp, assessing gaze of a man in a charcoal suit. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that made people move out of his way without him needing to ask. His wristwatch gleamed, his shoes polished to perfection. Everything about him screamed wealth and success. Her heart dropped. She was in his seat. "I think you're sitting in my spot," he said, his tone calm but firm. He held up his boarding pass, 2B. Emma flushed scarlet. She fumbled for her own pass, nearly dropping it in her panic. I must have made a mistake," she stammered. "I don't belong up here. I swear, I bought the cheapest ticket available, I didn't mean." The man took the pass from her trembling hand and studied it. His brow lifted slightly. "No mistake, you're in 2A. Emma blinked. "What? But, this is first class." A corner of his mouth curved. "Looks like you got lucky." He slid into the seat beside her without another word, pulling a sleek briefcase onto his lap. Emma sat frozen. Lucky. She had never felt less lucky in her life. She was a single mother at 23, her savings nearly gone, her only hope resting on a job interview she wasn't sure she'd be able to attend if she couldn't afford a babysitter. She wanted to explain that to him, to insist she didn't belong in this expensive seat, but she stayed quiet. Lily stirred in her arms, fussing. Emma tensed, bracing for the inevitable sigh or irritated glance. People never liked sitting near babies. She whispered soft shushing sounds, rocking gently. Instead, the man beside her leaned over slightly, his voice softer now. "She's beautiful," he said. Emma's eyes widened. "Oh, thank you. I'm sorry if she cries. I'll do my best to keep her quiet." He gave a small shrug. "Don't worry, babies cry, means they're alive." Emma didn't know what to say to that. She focused on adjusting the blanket around Lily, hoping the conversation would end. But a strange sense of calm settled over her at his words. No judgment, no irritation, just acceptance. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Emma pressed her forehead to the window. She whispered to herself the mantra that had gotten her this far, one step at a time. For Lily, but her eyes stung, and she blinked hard. It had been months since she'd felt anything but exhaustion. The engines roared, the plane climbed, and Lily whimpered again. Emma pulled a bottle from her bag, fumbling as a bit of formula spilled onto her lap. Her face flamed with embarrassment. Before she could reach for a wipe, a napkin appeared in front of her. "Here," the man said simply. Emma took it, murmuring, "Thanks." Her throat felt tight. No one ever offered her help. Minutes turned into an hour. The man opened his briefcase, flipping through files filled with neat rows of numbers and charts. Emma tried not to look, but she couldn't help it. He seemed like someone out of another world, the kind of man who appeared in business magazines or on the news, making decisions that shaped entire companies. "Headed somewhere important?" he asked suddenly, eyes still on his papers. Emma hesitated. "Chicago. I have an interview. For an assistant job." His gaze lifted to meet hers. Sounds important. She laughed softly, though it came out hollow. It's everything. If I don't get it, I don't know what I'll do. He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "You're stronger than you think. Most people wouldn't have made it this far." The words struck something deep inside her. She looked away quickly, blinking back tears. No one had called her strong in a long time. As the hours passed, Emma found herself talking. She told him about working at the diner before it closed, about the boyfriend who had walked out the moment she announced her pregnancy, about scraping by with babysitting gigs and part-time work. She hadn't meant to open up, but he listened without judgment, his silence encouraging her to continue. By the time the plane began its descent, she felt strangely lighter, as though speaking her struggles aloud had lifted some invisible weight. She adjusted Lily's blanket, readying for landing, and turned to him with a small, embarrassed smile. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not judging me, for letting me stay." He studied her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He placed it in her hand. "My company's in Chicago," he said. "We're looking for an executive assistant. I think you'd be perfect." Emma froze. Her eyes dropped to the card. Daniel Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. The name rang faintly familiar, and now she understood why. He was one of those men who did belong in magazines, who made headlines for acquisitions and charity donations. I can't," she stammered. "I'm not qualified. I was just hoping for an office assistant job. I don't even own a suit." Daniel shook his head, his gaze steady. "Emma, I don't hire suits. I hire people, and you've got resilience, determination, and heart. Show up Monday morning. The rest, we'll figure out." Emma's throat closed. She stared at him, card trembling in her hand. For months she had lived in survival mode, her only focus keeping Lily fed and warm. Now, for the first time, the future seemed possible, bright, even. The plane touched down. Passengers gathered their belongings, chatter filling the cabin. Daniel lifted her diaper bag with ease, carrying it down the aisle despite her protests. At the gate, he handed it back and gave her one last smile. "Take care of Lily," he said. "I'll see you soon." And then he was gone, melting into the crowd with the same quiet authority he'd arrived with. Emma stood frozen, clutching Lily in one arm and the card in her other hand. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Was it fate, luck, a miracle? She didn't know. But she knew this. She was no longer alone on this uphill climb. 2 days later, wearing her cleanest thrift store blouse and shaking with nerves, Emma walked into the towering glass building of Whitmore Industries. Her reflection in the polished lobby floor looked small, out of place. But she tightened her grip on Lily's photo tucked in her pocket and repeated Daniel's words, "I don't hire suits. I hire people." She stepped into the elevator, heart pounding. The doors closed, carrying her upward. And for the first time in a long time, Emma believed she was headed somewhere she belonged. Sometimes, one wrong seat could lead you exactly where you were meant to be. Emma adjusted the strap of her worn diaper bag as she boarded the plane, her 6-month-old daughter Lily squirming against her chest. The long day of traveling through crowded terminals had left her exhausted, and the judging glances of strangers didn't help. She wasn't the kind of person who traveled often. This trip was a desperate gamble. She had spent almost all her savings on a ticket to Chicago, where she had a job interview that might finally offer stability for her and Lily. She glanced at her boarding pass, C2A. That couldn't be right. Emma's brow furrowed as she scanned the rows. She had expected a cramped economy seat at the back of the plane, but instead she was standing near the front, staring at wide leather chairs with polished armrests and plenty of legroom. First class. Her heart sank. She couldn't possibly belong here. She had booked the cheapest ticket available, double-checking every detail before she clicked purchase. Maybe the airline had made a mistake. But Lily whimpered, her tiny fists waving, and Emma could feel the eyes of other passengers on her. Embarrassed, she slipped into the seat, hoping no one would notice before she figured things out. The chair felt like a cloud beneath her, comfortable, almost luxurious compared to anything she'd known. She rocked Lily, whispering a lullaby. For a brief, stolen moment, she let herself breathe. The moment ended when a shadow fell across her. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood beside her seat, his expression calm but firm. Everything about him spoke of wealth and success, the tailored cut of his jacket, the gleaming watch on his wrist, the air of quiet authority. Emma's stomach twisted. She had taken his seat. "I think you're sitting in my spot," he said, holding up his boarding pass for 2B. Emma flushed red. She fumbled with her own pass, nearly dropping it in her panic. I must have made a mistake, she stammered. I don't belong up here. I swear I didn't mean. The man took her pass, studied it, and raised an eyebrow. No mistake, you're in 2A. Emma blinked. But this is first class. He gave the faintest hint of a smile. Looks like you got lucky. With that, he sat down beside her. Emma stared straight ahead, mortified. Lucky, she had never felt less lucky in her life. A single mother at 23, broken, nearly hopeless, with a crying baby and a life that seemed to unravel more each day. Sitting next to a man like him, a man who clearly belonged here, only reminded her of how far she had fallen. Lily stirred again, letting out a small cry. Emma braced for irritation, but instead the man leaned slightly closer, his voice softer now. She's beautiful, he said. Emma's throat tightened. Thank you, I'll try to keep her quiet. He shrugged. Babies cry. It means they're alive. She wasn't sure how to respond. No one ever said things like that to her. Most people gave her annoyed looks or whispered complaints about crying babies. For the first time, she felt seen. As the plane took off, Emma pressed her forehead to the window, whispering silently to herself, one step at a time. For Lily, but the sting of tears blurred her vision. She hated how fragile she felt, how close she was to breaking. The engines hummed, and Lily fussed again. In her rush to prepare a bottle, a bit of formula spilled onto Emma's lap. She flushed with embarrassment, until a napkin appeared in front of her. Here, the man said simply. Emma murmured a quick, thanks, her voice catching. She was so used to doing everything alone that the smallest act of kindness nearly undid her. The hours stretched on. The man opened his briefcase, reviewing papers filled with charts and figures, the kind of work Emma could barely imagine. She tried to keep to herself, but eventually he spoke again. Headed somewhere important. Emma hesitated. Chicago. I have an interview. For an assistant job. Sounds important, he said. She gave a hollow laugh. It's everything. If I don't get it, I don't know what I'll do. His eyes lingered on her for a moment. You're stronger than you think, he said. Most people wouldn't have made it this far. The words hit her like a jolt. No one had called her strong in years. And though she didn't realize it yet, her life was about to change forever. Part 2. The offer. The flight stretched on with the steady hum of engines. Emma dozed lightly with Lily nestled against her chest, until turbulence jolted her awake. Her heart pounded as she clutched the baby tighter. Easy, the man said calmly beside her. We're fine. Emma nodded, though her hands shook. Ever since Lily was born, every bump and every risk felt magnified. Her baby depended on her for everything, and she lived in constant fear of failing. The man studied her. You carry a lot on your shoulders, he said quietly. She let out a humorless laugh. I don't have a choice. Something softened in his eyes, but he said nothing more. Instead, he returned to his files, neat rows of charts and numbers that seemed like a foreign language to her. Emma couldn't help talking after that. The silence between them felt safe, encouraging. She told him about losing her job at the diner when it shut down, about Lily's father disappearing before the baby was born, about scraping by on babysitting and cleaning jobs. She confessed she bought the ticket to Chicago with nearly the last of her savings, desperate for a chance at an interview. She expected pity, maybe even polite disinterest. Instead, he listened, really listened. And when she trailed off, embarrassed, he said simply, "You've done more with less than most people ever will. That takes strength." Emma bit her lip, blinking hard. Strength. He made it sound like a gift instead of a burden. The plane began its descent. Emma gathered her bag, rocking Lily as the baby stirred. She turned to him with a small, tentative smile. Thank you, for not judging me, for letting me stay. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card, pressing it into her hand. My company's in Chicago, he said. We're looking for an executive assistant. I think you'd be perfect. Emma's mouth fell open. She looked at the card. Daniel Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. She recognized the name now. He was one of those men who appeared in glossy magazines, the kind who made headlines with million-dollar deals. I can't, she whispered. I don't have the right background. I don't even own a proper suit. Daniel shook his head, his gaze unwavering. I don't hire suits. I hire people, and I can tell you're exactly what I need. Show up Monday morning. The rest, we'll figure out. Tears pricked Emma's eyes. She wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't worthy, but something in his voice silenced her doubts. For the first time in months, hope stirred in her chest. The plane landed, passengers filed out, the man carrying her diaper bag without a word. At the gate, he handed it back and offered one last smile. "Take care of Lily, I'll see you soon." Then he disappeared into the crowd, leaving Emma standing there, clutching Lily and the card like a lifeline. 2 days later, dressed in her cleanest thrift store blouse, Emma walked into the towering glass building of Whitmore Industries. The lobby gleamed, and her reflection in the marble floor looked small and out of place. But she held Daniel's words close. "I don't hire suits. I hire people." With Lily's photo tucked in her pocket, she stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut, carrying her upward toward a future she never imagined possible. Because sometimes, one wrong seat is exactly where you're meant to be.